everyone. I'm Mercedes Blackwood, the Director of Strategic Impact at the Women's Public Leadership Network, also known as WPLN. I'm thrilled today to be joined by Tiffany Smiley, candidate for U.S. Senate here in Washington State. Tiffany, thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm so excited to introduce you to our network.
Thank you, Mercedes. I'm so happy to spend this time with you and share your important work. I think it's so incredibly valuable for the future in this country and for our children for generations to come. So thank you so much.
Yes, welcome. Well, as you know, this week, WPLN is hosting a week-long celebration of moms on the trail this Mother's Day. This series of events will feature women from across the United States in the various backgrounds who've either ran for office, have served as elected or appointed officials, and have done it all while balancing motherhood. Tiffany, you're a former triage nurse, a mother to 3 young boys, and a wife to a veteran who was severely injured in Iraq. Before making your decision to run for office, can you share a little bit about your background leading up to your decision to run and what motivated you?
Yes, 17 years ago, if someone would have told me that I would be a candidate for United States Senate, I would have laughed and said, you're crazy. There's no way my life will lead into politics. Ever since I was in kindergarten, I wanted to be a nurse. So there was no question what I would do when I graduated high school. I always knew that was my path. I'm going to be a nurse. I'm going to get my bachelor's in science and nursing and perhaps move on to nurse practitioner. That was my pathway. And in some ways, I was living my American dream. I had married my high school sweetheart, Tiffany Smiley, and he was a newly commissioned officer from the United States Military Academy. I was a nurse. He was an officer. My new last name was Smiley. It doesn't get very much more American dreamish than that. And in some ways, I thought there's nothing that will stand in our way. This is our future. But 17 years ago, all of that changed with a phone call. I was woken out of bed before my nursing shift while Scotty was deployed to Mosul, Iraq. He was deployed for over a year-long deployment, and I was woken out of bed excited, expecting it to be Scotty, but it was someone else's voice on the other end of the line. They began to deliver, the heartbreaking news that totally changed the trajectory of our life. So 17 years ago, at 23 years old, this month in April, I walked into Scotty's trauma care unit at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, where he had, tubes coming out of every orifice of his body. He was unrecognizable from the life-saving medication they were pumping into him. One thing was certain, and that was that he would never see again. He would be blind forever. The shrapnel from the suicide bomber completely blinded him. He was in a coma and he was paralyzed on the right side of his body. I was 23 years old. I had student loan debt. I had a car payment, and I had just resigned from my nursing job. So that was a day that really changed my whole trajectory in life. And it was truly the day that I began fighting. I experienced the pain of bad policy. The Army came at me right away and asked me to begin to sign Scotty's medical retirement paperwork and move him into the VA. And I always say, thank God I was a nurse. Thank God I had that education. Nurses are trained advocates. You don't mess with us. You don't come between nurses and their patients. And, took on the Army, took on the VA. And really, it's in that fight of experiencing bad policy. Not only that, but also learning from coalition building and really seeing impossible, seeing what you can do when people say something is impossible, when you work together and you do something for the greater good. So truly, that's when my fight began, and my trajectory, I guess, in some ways into politics began 17 years ago.
That's incredible, Tiffany. I like how you say that nurses are trained advocates. At WPLN, we always say we're looking for public servants, not politicians. And the foundation of that is women that come from various backgrounds that already have expertise, that have something to bring to the table. So I really love that you touched on that. We're heading up on election day. What do you hope to accomplish in office?
I think there is so much to accomplish right now in our country. And I have to say, as a nurse, I was a urgent care triage nurse, and we're trained, you never know what's coming in the door, but you're trained to stop the bleeding and save a life. And when I look at our country today, I see, as a nurse, I just see us bleeding out all over the place, from our border to our education system, inflation, healthcare, our national security, our energy. So there's a lot of work to be done. And I certainly wasn't afraid to jump into Scotty's hospital room and stop the bleeding for him and save his life. I didn't mention, but he went on and became the first active duty officer to continue service to our country, something that had never been done before. I certainly wasn't afraid to, jump into the Army and do something that had never been done before, taking on the Army, stop the bleeding there, stop the bleeding in the VA. So really, I look forward to stopping the bleeding in this country. First and foremost, we need to secure our border. There's enough fentanyl coming across our border, and it's coming into our schools right here in Washington State. It's killing our children. I've heard stories all over Washington State. It's heartbreaking and it's unacceptable, especially as a mother with 3 young boys that are in our education system. So I look forward to securing the border, focusing on decreasing, stopping spending, getting inflation under control, bringing back energy independence to save the American people energy costs. And not only that, energy independence is a national security issue, and our children need protected for generations to come. So I look forward to ensuring that we get inflation under control, we get crime under control, secure our border, and ensure that our children have competitive, quality education that puts them on the front of a global economy. That's what we need to be focusing on, and that's what I look forward to working on when I get into the Senate.
That's excellent. You're speaking of your boys as, inspiration for your campaign. What was the conversation like with your family as you were making this decision? Did you have a conversation with your boys?
Yes, we did. We always say it's Team Smiley that's running. It's our whole family. And, truly, a lot of people don't know this, but Scotty, my husband, was the one pushing me out the door. He was the one saying, Tiffany, you need to do this. He's like, you're the fighter. You're the one that stood up for me and was a voice when I didn't have one. You took on the VA. You've moved the needle in the VA. You're the one to stand up and fight. And if there's anyone to beat Patty Murray, a 30-year entrenched career politician, he's like, it's you, Tiffany. So I was like, okay, Scotty. I mean, he is absolutely my rock. And I hope that more spouses, more women in my position have spouses that encourage them to step out and lead into these roles and these positions. But I mean, my husband, he's just as worried about our children's future here in Washington State, in this country. And he's like, Tiffany, if there's someone to beat Patty, it's you. So it was really us together. And then we had a conversation with our boys because it affects all of us, Our family is certainly no stranger to sacrifice. We had to explain to our 3 boys, it was usually around the age of 6 that they started to understand why their father is blind. And you can imagine it's a very hard conversation when they start to realize that another human being looked their father in the eyes and wanted to kill him. When they started to understand that, it was hard. I mean, all 3 of them cried and cried and cried. But it also opened the door to talk about forgiveness and sacrifice, and that freedom isn't free in this country, that you have to stand up and fight. And when you have the opportunity to do something right, you always do it. So that's the mindset that our 3 boys come from. But when we came to them to talk about this Senate race, they wanted to know, what does it mean? Do we have to move?
Yeah.
How often will we get see Mom? And so we kind of explained the schedule to them and what it looks like. We assured them they wouldn't have to move, that they could live and stay in Washington State, but that Mom would travel back and forth. And it was my middle son, that Graham, he said, Mom, I don't know, I don't know. And I said, absolutely, think about it, pray about it. You have all the time in the world, but this is a team effort and we won't do this unless we're all on board. And it was so cute. The next morning he woke up, and the minute he saw me, he ran right for me and he said, Mom, you have to do this. And it was just this moment, like, as a mother, it makes me a little bit emotional because it's also for their future. And I think back to those days where we had to talk to them about why their father can't see. And now we're talking to them about their mother running for Senate. And it was like a light bulb went off in him. He was like, you have to do this. Like they understood it. For our family, it was really a full circle moment.
Yeah.
Where it is about service and it is about sacrifice, and we're all willing to take that on together.
What an inspiration you are to them. It sounds like your boys and your husband are natural leaders and eager to help you out. How are your kids participating in any aspects of the campaign? Are they rolling up their sleeves and getting dirty? How's your husband helping out? How are they engaged?
Yes. So I am running a very, very long campaign. So we've been at this for a whole year. So they kind of pop in and out, and they, have been in. My youngest is in some of our videos that we just recorded, which will be fun to get to have the opportunity to share those. But they will be out and about with us more often, as this campaign season ramps up and we start getting really close to the primary and into the general, we will have them out and about with us for sure. They've done a couple parades with me and they love it. They just wear the shirts and, put on the hats and get all the candy that they can get. And Scotty, my husband, again, is my biggest fan, my greatest champion, and he is an amazing surrogate on the campaign trail. Any opportunity he has, he's out there, sharing our message about what we can do for Washington State and this country. So I feel blessed to have them all on board with me, and making it a team effort, making it a family effort, is refreshing on the campaign trail. And I think it means a lot to the people too that we're representing and that we're fighting for.
Yeah, I think the relatability for so many Americans, especially Washingtonians, seeing a family run together is something that resonates among those living here. I know there's a lot of great inspirational things happening in the campaign, but were there any difficult situations that you had to overcome in regard to balancing your campaign life and your family life?
Yeah, it is difficult. I'm not going to lie. It is, it's a juggling act. And, my oldest son got really sick and this winter, and I had to cancel things, and it's stressful. Like, that's hard because you feel pulled one way and pulled another way. But I always, at the end of the day, when I'm in those situations, I always go back to my gut. It's like, trust your gut. I needed to be with him in those moments. And thankfully, the people that we had to reschedule with, they understood as well. And I loved it. One person said, even Senate candidates need to be moms sometimes too, like completely understood. When I had to reschedule that event, I'm like, absolutely. And so there are challenges that come, but I think as women, we need to remember that don't look at those as a bad thing, I guess. Look at it as an opportunity to serve your family in that moment, in that day, in that time. And there will always be time to get back out on the campaign trail and serve again, but we can't do all be all, right? That's unrealistic. So I think, there are difficulties. It's, our boys are all in sports. My husband is blind, but I think it's also ensuring that your circle of help and support is there for you, because, I have an incredible family. I have an incredible support system and an incredible network. And that is key to being successful on the campaign trail, because it does get stressful and it gets hard, and kids have things, you have to miss things. But at the end of the day, I think it's just remembering that you're a human being and you're doing the best you can, and trust your gut. If you need to be with your kids, go be with your kids.
Absolutely. Campaigns are tough. I've had my fair share of time on the campaign trail. And when you're talking about the support, I love that you are hitting on the team aspect. But I also just want to share that WPLN, while we serve as a landing spot for women on the right to receive training, we also do provide training for spouses and children learning how to support their moms on the campaign trail. So just something to keep in mind as you're watching this week's series. Tiffany, what advice would you give or piece of wisdom you'd wish you'd known before stepping into the campaign trail?
Oh, I think, it's take one day at a time, because it can be overwhelming and you have a lot of goals and, future events and things that you're trying to accomplish. but it's just about one day at a time. Do what you can today, and then wake up the next day and do everything you need to do that day. And I think for me, I've learned to not get too ahead of myself. And that's been key, just to staying focused on the day and accomplishing what you have that day is key.
Excellent. For this Mother's Day, how do you plan on celebrating? I hope it is a little bit relaxing at the least.
Yes. Well, I will be home, so I'm super excited to be home. I usually try to be home on Sundays with my family, all of us together. So we will go to church and we will go to brunch somewhere and hang out. We'll probably play in the backyard, and my boys, they play all kinds of games like spike ball. I don't know if you've heard of spike ball or the four square volleyball. So we like to get outside and enjoy the beautiful weather and hang out together. So I'm sure it will be full of activity. It usually is.
Perfect. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait for our network to engage with you and hear your incredible story and to follow you along the campaign trail. For more information for this week's series of events, go to womenspublicleadership.net or take a look at any of our social media platforms. And we look forward to staying in touch with you all. Thank you.